The stagecoach rattled into Gila City, Arizona Territory, on a blistering afternoon in June of 1882, carrying a woman who had traveled over 2,000 miles to marry a man she had never met, and she was about to tell him a truth that could send her right back to where she came from. Delilah Thompson pressed her gloved hand against the dusty window, watching the sun-bleached buildings emerge through the shimmering heat. Her throat felt tight with more than just dust and nerves. The letter tucked inside her bodice seemed to burn against her skin, the careful words she had practiced for weeks now jumbling in her mind. She had debated telling Samuel Irwin the truth in her correspondence, but fear had kept her pen moving only across safe topics like the weather and her modest skills in cooking and sewing. The coach lurched to a stop outside the general store, and Delilah took a steadying breath. She was 23 years old, and this was her chance at a new beginning. But it would mean nothing if it was built on deception. A man stepped forward as the driver opened the door. He was tall, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of creek water in summer. His brown hair needed a trim, curling slightly at his collar, and his jaw was strong beneath a day's worth of stubble. He held his hat in his hands, turning it nervously as he watched her descend. "Miss Thompson." His voice was deeper than she had imagined, roughened by wind and sun. "Mr. Irwin." She accepted his offered hand, feeling the calluses that spoke of hard work. His grip was gentle despite the strength she could feel there. "Samuel, please, and I hope I can call you Delilah." A smile softened his angular features, reaching those remarkable eyes. "Your journey was long. You must be exhausted." "It was long," she admitted, suddenly aware of how disheveled she must look after days of travel. Her dark hair, which she had pinned so carefully that morning, had mostly escaped its constraints. Dust covered her blue traveling dress. "But I am glad to finally be here." He retrieved her trunk from the coach, hoisting it onto his broad shoulder with ease. "I have a room arranged for you at the boarding house. Mrs. Chen runs a respectable establishment. I thought you might want some time to settle before we talked about our arrangements." The kindness in his voice made her chest ache. She followed him down the wooden sidewalk, taking in the town that would be her home. Gila City was small but bustling, with miners and cowboys and families going about their business. The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly, but she could see the appeal of this wild place, the promise of opportunity that had drawn so many westward. The boarding house was a two-story structure painted white, with a wide porch that offered shade. A Chinese woman in her 40s emerged, wiping her hands on her apron. "You must be Miss Thompson. Welcome, I am Mrs. Chen." Her English was accented but clear, her smile warm. "I have nice room ready for you, cool faces north." "Thank you." Delilah felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders at the woman's genuine friendliness. Samuel set her trunk down in a simple but clean room with a bed covered in a colorful quilt, a washstand, and a chair by the window. "Mrs. Chen bustled about, opening the window to let in what breeze there was. "I will bring water for washing," Mrs. Chen said, then left them alone. An awkward silence filled the room. Samuel stood near the door as if uncertain whether to stay or go. Delilah knew she should say something, but her prepared words had fled. "I thought perhaps tomorrow we could talk properly," Samuel said. "About expectations and such. The minister said he could perform the ceremony any time after next week, once the banns are posted, if that suits you." "Samuel, wait." The words burst from her before she could stop them. "There is something I need to tell you, something I should have told you before in my letters." His expression grew cautious. "All right." She removed her gloves with shaking hands, setting them on the washstand. "I came here hoping for a fresh start, but I cannot begin our life together with dishonesty between us." "What is it?" He did not sound angry, only concerned. Delilah met his eyes, forcing herself not to look away. I have a past. In St. Louis, where I came from, I was engaged to be married. His name was Robert Harper. He was a banker's son, well respected, and everyone thought it was a good match. Samuel remained quiet, letting her continue. 3 months before our wedding, I discovered he was not the man I thought he was. He had debts, gambling debts to dangerous men. And he planned to marry me not for love, but for my father's money. Her voice wavered, but she pressed on. When I confronted him, he became angry. He struck me. She saw Samuel's jaw tighten, a muscle jumping there, but he said nothing. That was not the worst of it. He told everyone that I was the one who had called off the wedding, that I was unstable, prone to wild accusations. My reputation was ruined. People whispered. Even my own father half believed Robert's lies. I could not stay there, could not bear the shame of it. So when I saw your advertisement for a mail-order bride, I thought perhaps in the Arizona territory I could start over. But you deserve to know the truth. I am not some innocent young woman. I have been touched by scandal, and I understand if you no longer wish to marry me. The silence that followed felt endless. Mrs. Chen returned with a pitcher of water, glancing between them with knowing eyes before departing again. Samuel finally moved, coming closer but maintaining a respectful distance. "May I ask you something?" She nodded, bracing herself. "Did you love him?" This Robert Harper, the question surprised her. "I thought I did, but I realize now I loved the idea of what I thought he was, not who he truly was. And you came all this way, not knowing anything about me except what I wrote in a few letters. That took courage." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Delilah, I do not care about your past. What happened to you in St. Louis does not change who you are. And that man who hurt you, he is the one who should carry shame, not you." Tears pricked her eyes. "You do not think less of me." "Think less of you?" He shook his head. "I think you are braver than most people I have known. You could have stayed silent, let me find out later, or never at all. But you told me the truth, even knowing I might turn you away. That speaks to your character. Then you still want to marry me." Samuel's smile was gentle. "Delilah, I only see our future. Whatever happened before you stepped off that stage, it does not matter to me. What matters is who you choose to be from this day forward. And I hope you choose to stay here, to give us a chance to build something together." The relief that flooded through her was so intense she had to sit down on the edge of the bed. "Thank you," she whispered. "Get some rest," he said, heading toward the door. "Tomorrow I will show you around town, introduce you to folks. We can take things as slow as you need." After he left, Delilah let the tears come, but they were not tears of shame or fear. For the first time in over a year, she felt hope. The next morning, she dressed in her best day dress, a green cotton that brought out the hazel in her eyes and pinned her dark hair into a neat bun. When she came downstairs, Mrs. Chen had breakfast waiting along with Samuel, who stood when she entered. "You look lovely," he said, and she could tell he meant it. Over eggs and toast, Mrs. Chen chattered about the town, pointing out who was trustworthy and who to avoid. "The general store owner, Mr. Patterson, he charges fair prices. But the man who runs the saloon, he is snake. Stay away from his card games." Samuel grinned. "Mrs. Chen knows everyone's business." "Someone has to keep track," Mrs. Chen said primly. "Too many people in this town think Arizona territory is place with no rules. But we make community here. We must have standards." After breakfast, Samuel took Delilah on a tour. Gila City had sprung up around the silver mines in the area, and while some mining towns were rough and lawless, this one had families trying to put down roots. There was a schoolhouse, a church, the general store, a blacksmith, a livery stable, and of course several saloons. "My ranch is about 5 miles north of town," Samuel explained as they walked. "It is not much yet, just 160 acres with a small house and barn. I have been running cattle, building up my herd. It is hard work, but it is mine. Well, ours, if you decide to stay." "Tell me about your family," Delilah said. "Your letters mentioned a brother." A shadow crossed Samuel's face. "Simon was younger than me by 3 years. We came out here together 5 years ago, full of dreams about making our fortune, but he got sick 2 winters past. Pneumonia. There was nothing the doctor could do. I am sorry." She touched his arm gently. "It is why I put the advertisement in the paper. The ranch feels empty now, and I suppose I got tired of being alone with my thoughts." He looked at her seriously. "I should be honest, too. I am not looking for a marriage of convenience. I want a real partnership, someone to build a life with, someone to care about who might care about me too. I know that cannot happen overnight, but I hope it can grow between us." His honesty touched her deeply. "I want that too." They spent the rest of the morning visiting the various shops. At the general store, Samuel introduced her to Mr. Patterson, a portly man with a kind smile who welcomed her to Gila City. At the church, they met Reverend Walsh, who would perform their marriage ceremony. "Miss Thompson, we are always glad to see new families joining our community," the Reverend said. He was an older man with silver hair and wire-rimmed spectacles. "The Lord's work is in building His kingdom wherever we find ourselves, even in this rough territory." As they left the church, Delilah noticed a group of women watching them from across the street. Samuel followed her gaze. "That is Mrs. Fletcher and her daughter, and I think the other 2 are the Simmons sisters. They run the dress shop. Come on, I will introduce you." The 4 women ranged in age from perhaps 18 to 50. Mrs. Fletcher was a stern-looking woman in black, her daughter Sarah a pale girl who barely met Delilah's eyes. The Simmons sisters, Clara and Margaret, were more welcoming. "A mail-order bride, Mrs. Fletcher said, making it sound vaguely scandalous. "How modern. How practical," Clara Simmons countered. She was the younger of the sisters, maybe 30, with laugh lines around her blue eyes. "There are 5 men to every woman out here. Smart of Samuel to look back east." "You must come by the shop," Margaret added. She was perhaps 5 years older than her sister, with the same friendly demeanor. "We can alter your wedding dress if you brought one, or make something new." "I would like that, thank you," Mrs. Fletcher sniffed. "Well, I suppose we shall see you at church on Sunday. Come along, Sarah." As they walked away, Samuel shook his head. "Pay her no mind. Her husband was a miner who struck it rich, and she fancies herself better than everyone else now. Most folks are friendlier." Indeed, as the day progressed, Delilah found herself welcomed by shopkeepers and passers-by. By the time Samuel walked her back to the boarding house, she felt more optimistic about her decision to come west. "Would you like to ride out to the ranch tomorrow?" Samuel asked. "I would like you to see it before we marry. Make sure you know what you are getting into." "I would like that very much." That night, lying in bed and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the Arizona territory, Delilah thought about the strange turn her life had taken. A year ago, she had been planning a wedding to a man she thought she knew, surrounded by society and expectations. Now she was in a rough mining town, about to marry a cowboy rancher she had just met. Yet somehow, this felt more right than anything had in St. Louis. Samuel arrived the next morning with a gentle mare for her to ride. "Her name is Honey. She is steady and calm." They rode north out of town, the landscape opening up around them in shades of brown and gold, punctuated by sage and cactus. Mountains rose in the distance, purple against the brilliant blue sky. The heat was intense, but there was something beautiful about this harsh land. The ranch house came into view after about 40 minutes. It was a simple wooden structure, one story with a covered porch. Nearby stood a barn and a corral holding several horses. Cattle dotted the surrounding land. Samuel helped her dismount. "It is not fancy. It is honest," Delilah said. "I like it." Inside, the house was sparsely furnished but clean. There was a main room with a fireplace and a table, a small kitchen area and 2 bedrooms. Everything was neat, almost too neat, the home of someone living alone. "I know it needs a woman's touch," Samuel said, looking around critically. "I have just the basics." Delilah walked to the window, looking out at the land stretching away. "It has good bones, and that view is spectacular." They spent the afternoon at the ranch. Samuel showed her the cattle, explaining his plans to expand the herd. He introduced her to his ranch hands, 2 Mexican cowboys named Juan and Carlos who lived in the bunkhouse and helped manage the cattle. "Señorita," Juan said, removing his hat. He was in his 30s, weathered from sun and work. "It will be good to have a lady here. This one, he works too hard, never rests." "Someone has to keep you two in line," Samuel retorted, but there was affection in his voice. They rode back to town in the golden light of late afternoon. Delilah was tired but happy. The ranch felt like a place where she could build a life, where her past truly could stay in the past. Over the next week, she settled into a routine. She helped Mrs. Chen with chores at the boarding house, visited the Simmons sisters to plan her wedding dress, and spent time with Samuel whenever he came to town. They talked for hours, learning about each other. She discovered he loved to read but rarely had time for it. He learned she played the piano, though there was none in Gila City. They talked about their hopes, their fears, the kind of life they wanted to build. "I want children someday," Samuel admitted one evening as they sat on the boarding house porch. "A house full of noise and life. But I understand if you want to wait." "I want that too," Delilah said softly. "I want to fill that house with love and laughter." The wedding was set for a Saturday in early July. The Simmons sisters created a simple but beautiful dress of cream-colored silk, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Mrs. Chen insisted on making the wedding cake, a tall confection that she guarded jealously in her kitchen. The night before the wedding, Delilah could not sleep. She kept thinking about Robert, about the way he had looked at her when she had confronted him about his lies, the cold calculation in his eyes. Then she thought about Samuel, about the warmth and honesty she saw in him. They were nothing alike, but what if she was making another mistake? What if Samuel was hiding something too? She pushed the thought away. She had told him her truth and he had not flinched. That had to mean something. The wedding day dawned clear and hot. Mrs. Chen helped her dress, fussing over every detail. "You are beautiful bride," she declared. "Samuel is lucky man." The church was full. It seemed half the town had turned out, curious about the mail-order bride. Delilah stood at the back, her bouquet of wildflowers shaking in her hands, and wondered if she was truly ready for this. Then she saw Samuel at the altar, looking at her with such open hope and tenderness, and her doubts evaporated. She walked down the aisle, her eyes locked on his. Reverend Walsh performed the ceremony with appropriate solemnity. When it came time for the vows, Samuel took her hands in his. "Delilah, I promise to honor you, to protect you, to build a life with you based on honesty and respect. Whatever comes, we will face it together." Her voice was steady when she replied. "Samuel, I promise to stand by your side, to work alongside you, to create a home filled with love. I choose you and I choose our future." When Reverend Walsh pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed her gently, a promise of more to come. The reception was held at the church hall, with food and music and dancing. Delilah was whirled from partner to partner, meeting more people than she could possibly remember. Samuel stayed close, always ready to catch her hand and pull her back to his side. As the sun began to set, they rode out to the ranch together. Samuel had prepared the house, filling it with wildflowers and lighting lanterns. "I wanted it to be special," he said, suddenly shy. Delilah looked around at the simple beauty of it, at this man who had accepted her past without judgment, and felt her heart swell. "It is perfect." That night, they came together with a tenderness that made her forget every hurt, every disappointment. Samuel was patient and careful, making sure she felt safe. Afterward, lying in his arms, Delilah felt truly at peace for the first time in over a year. "No regrets," he murmured against her hair. "None," she whispered back. The next weeks were an adjustment as they learned to live together. Delilah threw herself into making the house a home, sewing curtains, planting a garden, learning to cook the meals Samuel liked. He was patient with her mistakes, like the time she burned the biscuits so badly they were inedible, or when she left the gate open and 2 chickens escaped. "We will learn together," he said, helping her chase down the wayward birds. Juan and Carlos adopted her as their patron saint, constantly praising her cooking even when she knew it was not quite right. "Señora, you make the best tortillas," Carlos would say, though hers were nowhere near as good as the ones Juan made. She learned the rhythm of ranch life, the early mornings and long days. Samuel taught her to ride better, taking her out to check on the cattle. She loved those rides, just the 2 of them and the vast Arizona landscape. One evening about a month after the wedding, they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset when Samuel said, "I have been thinking about adding on to the house. Another bedroom or 2, maybe a bigger kitchen." "Already planning for those children," Delilah teased. "Maybe." He pulled her closer. "Or maybe I just want you to have the space you deserve. You have made this place a home, Delilah. I want you to have everything you need." She kissed him softly. "I have everything I need right here." But their peaceful existence was shattered one afternoon in August when Delilah went into town for supplies. She was at the general store, selecting fabric for new shirts for Samuel, when a man's voice behind her made her blood run cold. Well, Delilah Thornton, or should I say Mrs. Thompson now?" She turned slowly to find Robert Harper standing there, looking exactly as she remembered. Blonde hair, blue eyes, expensive suit now dusty from travel, and that smile that had once charmed her but now made her skin crawl. "What are you doing here?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Is that any way to greet your former fiancé? I have come a long way to find you, my dear." Mr. Patterson was watching them with concern. Delilah set down the fabric with shaking hands. "We have nothing to discuss. Please leave." "Now, Delilah, do not be hasty. I have made a long journey. The least you can do is hear me out." Robert moved closer, lowering his voice. "I know you told lies about me in St. Louis, about gambling debts and violence. I could have pressed charges for slander, but I am a forgiving man. I am willing to let bygones be bygones if you return with me. I told no lies. Everything I said was true, and I am not going anywhere with you." "You ruined me," Robert hissed, his pleasant facade cracking. "After you spread your poison, no respectable family would let their daughter near me. My father cut me off. Do you know what that is like? I lost everything because of your vicious tongue. You lost everything because of your own actions." Delilah backed toward the door. "Now leave me alone." Robert grabbed her arm. "You owe me. You owe me for the humiliation, for the losses I suffered. And one way or another, you are going to pay. Let her go." Delilah had never been so relieved to hear Samuel's voice. He stood in the doorway, his expression deadly calm in a way that was somehow more frightening than anger. Robert released her arm but did not back down. "You must be the cowboy who married my Delilah. Do you know what you have gotten yourself into? Do you know what she is?" "I know exactly who she is," Samuel said quietly. She is my wife, and you need to leave, now. I am not going anywhere. I have business with Delilah. No, you do not. Samuel stepped fully into the store. He was taller than Robert, broader, hardened by years of ranch work. Whatever you think you are owed, you are not getting it here. Delilah does not want to see you. So you can leave Gila City peacefully, or I can help you leave. Your choice. Robert looked between them, clearly calculating his options. Then his expression turned ugly. This is not over. She owes me and I will collect, he stormed out. Delilah sagged against the counter, shaking. Samuel was there immediately, pulling her into his arms. It is all right, he is gone. He found me, she whispered. After all this time he found me. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. I will fetch the sheriff. Man like that making threats, the law should know about it. The sheriff, a grizzled man named Tom Davies, listened to their story with growing concern. I can run him out of town, but if he is determined, he will just come back. Did he threaten you specifically? He said I owed him and he would collect, Delilah said. That is vague enough. He could claim he meant nothing by it. Sheriff Davies rubbed his jaw. I will have a talk with him, make it clear he is not welcome here, but you folks should be careful. A man who travels that far nursing a grudge, he is not stable. Samuel took Delilah back to the ranch, both of them watchful on the ride. Once home, he checked all the locks, something he had never bothered with before. He cannot hurt you here, Samuel assured her. Juan and Carlos are in the bunkhouse. I have my rifle, and I will not let him near you. But that night, Delilah could not sleep. She kept seeing Robert's face, hearing his threats. She had thought her past was behind her, but it had followed her west. Samuel held her close. Tell me about him. Tell me everything. So she did. She told him about the courtship, how charming Robert had been at first, how she had discovered the gambling debts when a rough-looking man had come to her father's house demanding payment, how Robert had explained it away at first, promised it was a misunderstanding. But she had investigated, had learned the truth about his character. When I confronted him, he became a different person, cold, calculating. He told me I was nothing without my family's money, that he had never loved me. And when I said I would not marry him, he struck me across the face and told me I would regret defying him. Samuel's arms tightened around her. He will never touch you again. I swear it. He ruined my reputation in St. Louis, spread lies about me being unstable, hysterical. Even my own father half believed him because Robert was so convincing. That is why I left. I could not bear everyone looking at me with pity or suspicion. Then he is the one who should be ashamed, not you. Over the next few days, they waited for Robert to make his next move. Sheriff Davies reported that Robert had taken a room at one of the saloons and was asking questions about Samuel's ranch, about their finances. He is looking for leverage, the sheriff said. Best I can tell, he is broke, probably hoping to extort money from you or the lady. He will get nothing from us, Samuel said grimly. A week after Robert's arrival, Delilah was working in her garden when she heard a horse approaching. Looking up, she saw Robert riding toward the house. She dropped her basket and ran inside, locking the door. Robert dismounted, coming to stand on the porch. Delilah, I know you are in there. Come out and talk to me like a reasonable woman. Go away, she called through the door. I am not leaving until we settle this. You owe me, Delilah. Your lies cost me everything. The least you can do is compensate me financially. I owe you nothing, $5,000, Robert said. That is what I calculate you cost me in lost opportunities and reputation damage. You give me that, and I will disappear from your life forever. I do not have that kind of money. But your rancher husband might. Or you could write to your father. I am sure he would pay to keep his daughter's scandal quiet. Juan and Carlos had heard the commotion and came running from the barn, rifles in hand. Robert saw them and backed toward his horse. You have until tomorrow to think about it, he called. $5,000, or I start telling everyone in town about your past, about how you were thrown out of St. Louis society, how you were engaged to me and ran away like a coward. Let us see how your new friends react to that. He rode off before Juan and Carlos could stop him. Delilah sank into a chair, shaking. When Samuel came home an hour later, having been out checking fence lines, he found her still sitting there, staring at nothing. She told him what Robert had said. Samuel listened, his expression growing harder with every word. "He is a blackmailer and a coward," Samuel said flatly. "We are not giving him a cent. But what if he tells everyone? What if people start looking at me the way they did in St. Louis?" Samuel knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "Delilah, look at me. Anyone worth knowing will not care about your past, and anyone who judges you for it is not worth our time. We are not letting him win. What do? We tell the truth. We tell it first before he can twist it into something ugly." The next day was Sunday. They went to church as usual, and when Reverend Walsh asked if anyone had announcements, Samuel stood. "I would like to say something." His voice carried through the small church. Every eye turned to him. Delilah's heart pounded. Samuel looked at her, and she nodded. Together they stood. "Most of you know my wife came here as a mail-order bride," Samuel began. "What you may not know is that she came west to escape a man who hurt her. His name is Robert Harper, and he is currently in town, trying to blackmail us." A murmur ran through the congregation. Mrs. Fletcher looked scandalized, but Clara Simmons leaned forward with interest, and several of the men looked angry. Delilah took a breath and spoke. "Mr. Harper was my fiancé in St. Louis. I discovered he had gambling debts and was only marrying me for my family's money. When I confronted him, he struck me and then spread lies about my character to save his own reputation. I came to Gila City for a fresh start, but he followed me here demanding money to keep quiet about my past. I am not ashamed of leaving him. I am ashamed I did not see his true nature sooner." Samuel continued, "We are telling you this because we will not be blackmailed. Whatever Harper says about my wife, whatever lies he spreads, you have heard the truth from us first. Delilah is a good woman who had the courage to leave a dangerous situation. She is my wife, and I stand by her completely." Reverend Walsh stood. "Thank you for your honesty. The Lord tells us that the truth will set us free. This man Harper sounds like someone we should all avoid." To Delilah's surprise, Clara Simmons stood as well. "I for one am glad Delilah came to Gila City. She is kind and hardworking, and any woman brave enough to cross the country alone to build a new life deserves our respect, not judgment." Others nodded. Even Mrs. Fletcher, though she looked like she had bitten into something sour, did not contradict. After church, people came up to them. Some offered support. Others were curious. But the general sentiment was on their side. In a town built by people seeking new opportunities, most understood the desire to leave the past behind. Robert made his appearance that afternoon, strutting into the saloon where many of the townspeople had gathered for Sunday dinner. He climbed onto a chair and announced in a loud voice, "Ladies and gentlemen, I feel it is my duty to warn you about the woman calling herself Mrs. Irwin. She is a liar and a fraud who destroyed my reputation in St. Louis with false accusations." Sheriff Davies, who had been waiting for just this moment, stepped forward. "We have already heard the story, Harper, from the lady herself, and frankly, your version does not hold water." Robert looked around at the unsympathetic faces. "She is lying. I am the victim here." "No," Clara Simmons said clearly. "You are a bully trying to profit from a woman's misfortune. We do not take kindly to that here." Juan stood up from his table. "You threaten the senora. You come to our ranch making demands. This is not the behavior of a gentleman." One by one, people turned their backs on Robert. Delilah, standing with Samuel at the edge of the room, felt tears prick her eyes. These people, most of whom she had known only a few months, were defending her. Robert climbed down from the chair, his face red with anger and humiliation. He pointed at Delilah. "You think you have won. You have not. I will make you pay for this." "That sounded like a threat," Sheriff Davies said. "I think it is time you left Gila City, Mr. Harper. In fact, I am going to escort you to the stage depot right now and make sure you get on the next coach out." "You cannot force me to leave." "Actually, I can. Vagrancy laws. You have no job, no property here, and you just made a public threat. So you can leave peaceful like, or I can arrest you and you can leave in chains after a few days in my jail. Your choice." Robert looked around wildly, but found no sympathy. Finally, with a curse, he stormed out. Sheriff Davies followed, along with several other men, to make sure he actually left. Samuel pulled Delilah close. "It is over." She leaned against him, hardly daring to believe it. "Do you think he will really leave? He has no reason to stay. His play failed. Everyone knows the truth now and no one is on his side." Later that evening, Sheriff Davies came to the ranch to confirm that Robert had indeed boarded the westbound stage. "He was still spitting mad, but he is gone. If he comes back, we will know about it, and I will arrest him on sight." That night, lying in bed, Delilah finally felt the weight lift from her shoulders. "I was so afraid," she admitted to Samuel. "Afraid that everyone would judge me, that they would believe him over me." "You underestimated the people of Gila City, and you underestimated yourself." Samuel kissed her forehead. "You stood up in that church and told your truth. That took more courage than running away would have. I had you beside me. That made all the difference. We are partners, Delilah. Whatever comes, we face it together." The months that followed were peaceful and happy. Delilah's garden flourished in the late summer, providing vegetables for their table. She made friends with Clara and Margaret Simmons, joining their weekly sewing circle. Even Mrs. Fletcher thawed slightly, admitting that Delilah had conducted herself with appropriate dignity during the unfortunate incident. Samuel expanded the ranch, buying more cattle and hiring an additional hand. The house addition he had planned began to take shape, with 2 new bedrooms and an expanded kitchen. "You are really serious about filling this place with children?" Delilah teased, watching the construction. "I am serious about building our future," Samuel replied. "However many children the Lord sees fit to bless us with, they will have room to grow." In October, Delilah realized her monthly courses were late. She waited another week to be sure, then rode into town to see Doc Henderson, an elderly physician who had practiced medicine for 40 years. He confirmed what she had suspected. "You are with child, Mrs. Irwin. I would estimate the baby will come sometime in late May or early June." Delilah rode home in a daze of happiness. She had hoped for this, but part of her had feared her body would not cooperate after all the stress of the past year. But here it was, proof that her new life was truly beginning. She waited until that evening to tell Samuel. He came in dusty and tired from working with the cattle, and she had his favorite dinner waiting: steak, potatoes, and fresh bread. "You are spoiling me," he said, kissing her cheek. "I have good reason. I have news." Something in her voice made him look at her sharply. "What kind of news?" "The best kind. We are going to have a baby." For a moment he just stared at her. Then a grin split his face and he picked her up and spun her around, laughing. "A baby, we are having a baby." "Careful," she protested, but she was laughing too. He set her down gently, suddenly concerned. "Are you all right? Should you be standing? Do you need to rest?" "Samuel, I am pregnant, not made of glass. Doc Henderson says I am perfectly healthy." But from that day on, Samuel treated her like precious china. He would not let her lift anything heavy. He insisted she rest in the afternoons. Juan and Carlos were just as bad, constantly fussing over her. "Señora, you should not be in the garden in this heat," Carlos would say. "The baby needs fresh air too," she would reply, but secretly she was touched by their concern. Winter came to the Arizona territory, bringing cooler temperatures and occasional rain. Delilah spent her time sewing baby clothes and preparing the new nursery. The Simmons sisters threw her a party in January, where the women of Gila City brought gifts and advice. "The first one is always the hardest," Mrs. Chen said sagely, "but you are strong. You will do fine." Even Mrs. Fletcher contributed a beautiful crocheted blanket, admitting, "I made one for each of my 3 children. It seems right to continue the tradition." Delilah felt truly accepted, truly part of the community. These women had rallied around her when Robert tried to destroy her reputation, and now they were celebrating her growing family. Samuel was building a cradle in the evenings, working by lamplight to get every detail perfect. Delilah would sit nearby, mending or sewing, content in the quiet domesticity. "What do you hope for?" Samuel asked one evening. "A boy or a girl, I do not care as long as the baby is healthy, but I suspect your ranch hands are hoping for a boy to carry on the ranching tradition." "They can hope all they want. A daughter would be just as welcome." Spring arrived with a burst of wildflowers across the range. Delilah's belly had grown round and full, and she moved more slowly now, tired from carrying the extra weight. Doc Henderson checked on her regularly, pronouncing everything normal. "The baby has a strong heartbeat," he said in early May. "Should be here within the month." Delilah nested frantically those last weeks, organizing and reorganizing the nursery, washing all the tiny clothes multiple times. Samuel watched her with amusement and love. "Everything is ready, sweetheart. You can rest now." "I cannot rest. What if I forgot something? What if the baby comes early and I am not prepared? You are the most prepared mother in the Arizona territory. Come sit with me." They sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the mountains. Delilah rested her hand on her belly, feeling the baby move. "Are you frightened?" Samuel asked. "A little." "About the birth, about being a good mother. There is so much that could go wrong. And so much that can go right. You are going to be a wonderful mother, Delilah. I have no doubts about that." The baby decided to arrive on a hot afternoon in late May. Delilah had been hanging laundry when the first pain struck, low in her back. She stood still, breathing through it. It could be false labor. Doc Henderson had warned her about that, but when the pains continued, growing stronger and closer together, she knew this was real. Samuel was out on the range, and she was alone except for Juan and Carlos. "Carlos," she called, trying to keep the panic from her voice. "I need you to fetch the doctor and Samuel. The baby is coming." Carlos went pale. "Now, right now." "Yes, now, hurry." He ran for his horse while Juan helped her inside. Mrs. Chen, bless her, arrived before the doctor, summoned by some mysterious network of women that seemed to know everything. "I bring supplies," Mrs. Chen said briskly. "You lie down now, babies take time." But this baby seemed in a hurry. The pains came hard and fast. Doc Henderson arrived just in time with Samuel right behind him, his face ashen with worry. "Is she all right? Is the baby all right?" "Both fine, but you need to wait outside. This is women's work," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "I am not leaving her," Samuel said stubbornly. Delilah, between contractions, managed a weak laugh. "Let him stay. I want him here." The next hours were a blur of pain and effort. Mrs. Chen held her hand, coaching her through the contractions. Samuel stayed by her head, whispering encouragement. Doc Henderson worked efficiently, checking the baby's progress. "You are doing wonderfully," Doc Henderson said. "Almost there now, one more big push." Delilah bore down with the last of her strength, and suddenly there was a lusty cry filling the room. She fell back against the pillows, exhausted. "It is a boy," Doc Henderson announced. "A healthy baby boy." He cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a blanket, then placed him in Delilah's arms. She looked down at the tiny red face, the perfect little fingers, and felt her heart overflow. "He is beautiful," Samuel breathed, his voice thick with emotion. "He is perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, good lungs," Mrs. Chen pronounced. "Strong, healthy boy." They named him Simon, after Samuel's late brother. Samuel held his son with such tenderness, such awe, that Delilah fell in love with him all over again. "Thank you," Samuel whispered. "Thank you for this gift." The next weeks were a chaos of feedings and diaper changes and very little sleep. But Delilah had never been happier. Simon was a good baby, healthy and alert. Samuel was a devoted father, taking turns walking the floor when Simon was fussy, changing diapers without complaint. Juan and Carlos were besotted with the baby. "Un angelito," Juan would say, making faces to get Simon to smile. The whole town celebrated the new arrival. Clara and Margaret brought food. Even Mrs. Fletcher stopped by with advice and a silver rattle that had belonged to her grandmother. "He has good strong lungs, Mrs. Fletcher said approvingly as Simon wailed. "He will keep you on your toes." As summer settled over the Arizona territory, Delilah would sit on the porch with Simon in her arms, watching Samuel work with the horses, and marveled at how much her life had changed. 2 years ago, she had been trapped in a life that was slowly suffocating her, engaged to a man who did not love her, surrounded by people who judged her. Now she had a husband who cherished her, a son who needed her, a community that had accepted her, and a home that was truly hers. The past no longer haunted her. Robert Harper was gone, likely moved on to some other scheme, and even if he had not been, it would not matter. She was not that frightened girl anymore. Simon grew quickly, thriving in the Arizona heat. By his first birthday in May of 1884, he was walking and getting into everything. Samuel had to fence off the porch to keep him from tumbling down the steps. "He has your adventurous spirit," Samuel told Delilah, watching their son determinedly climb onto a chair. "And your stubbornness," she replied with a laugh. That summer, Delilah realized she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Simon kept her busy enough that she did not have time to worry. Their daughter, Dorothy, was born in February of 1885, during one of the coldest weeks of the year. She was smaller than Simon had been, with delicate features and Delilah's hazel eyes. "She is going to be trouble," Samuel said lovingly. "I can already tell." He was right. Dorothy had a will of iron wrapped in a sweet exterior. Even as an infant, she knew what she wanted and would not settle until she got it. The ranch continued to prosper. Samuel had built up one of the best cattle herds in the area, and his horses were known for their quality. They hired more hands and expanded the house again, adding a real parlor and a proper dining room. Delilah started a small school in Gila City, teaching the children of miners and ranchers their letters and numbers. The town had grown, becoming more established, with paved streets and even talk of bringing in a railroad spur. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The children grew. Simon was serious and thoughtful, always asking questions about how things worked. Dorothy was mischievous and charming, able to talk her way out of trouble. In the spring of 1887, when Simon was 3 and Dorothy 2, Delilah received a letter that made her hands shake. It was from her father in St. Louis. She had not heard from him since leaving, had assumed he had disowned her after believing Robert's lies. Now here was a letter, the handwriting shaky with age. Samuel found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the unopened envelope. "What is it?" A letter from my father. I do not know if I want to read it. You want me to read it first? She shook her head and carefully broke the seal. The letter was short. My dear Delilah, I do not know if you will even receive this, or if you will want to hear from me after I failed you so badly. Robert Harper was arrested last year for fraud. In the investigation, the truth came out about his character and his treatment of you. I realized then what a fool I had been to believe his lies over my own daughter. I wronged you terribly, and I do not expect your forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that I know the truth now, and I am sorry. If you are willing, I would like to know how you are, if you are happy and safe. Your loving father, Richard Thompson. Delilah read the letter twice, tears streaming down her face. Samuel pulled her into his arms. He knows now, she said. He knows I was telling the truth. Are you going to write back? She thought about it. Part of her wanted to cling to her anger, to the hurt of not being believed, but she thought about her children, about how she would feel if they ever shut her out of their lives. Yes, he made a mistake, but he is trying to make amends. I think I can forgive him. She wrote back, telling her father about Samuel, about the children, about their life in Arizona. She sent a photograph that a traveling photographer had taken of their family. Her father's return letter was full of joy and relief. He wanted to visit to meet his grandchildren. The reunion happened that summer. Richard Thompson was older than Delilah remembered, his hair white, his movements slower. But when he saw her, his face crumpled. I am so sorry, he said, embracing her. So very sorry. I know, Papa, I know. He stayed for a month, marveling at the ranch, playing with his grandchildren, getting to know Samuel. The two men took to each other, bonding over cigars and conversation about cattle and business. You chose well, Richard told Delilah one evening. Samuel is a good man, better than I deserved after how I treated you. You made a mistake, we all do. What matters is what we do after. When Richard left, it was with promises to visit again and an invitation for them to come to St. Louis whenever they wished. Delilah felt a piece of her heart heal that she had not known was still broken. The years flowed by, marked by the changing seasons and the milestones of their children. Simon grew tall and lean like his father, with the same quiet strength. Dorothy was beautiful and spirited, keeping everyone on their toes. In 1889, they welcomed another son, Daniel, who was placid and easygoing from birth. 2 years later came another daughter, Daisy, who was as adventurous as her oldest brother. The ranch house was always full of noise and laughter, exactly as Samuel had dreamed. Delilah taught her children to read and write, to appreciate beauty and kindness. Samuel taught them to ride and rope, to respect the land and the animals in their care. Gila City grew into a prosperous town. The railroad came through in 1890, bringing more people and commerce. The Simmons sisters expanded their dress shop. Mrs. Chen's boarding house was always full, even Mrs. Fletcher mellowed with age, becoming almost pleasant through it all. Samuel and Delilah's love deepened. They had faced trials together and come through stronger. They had built not just a ranch but a life, a family, a legacy. On their 10th wedding anniversary in July of 1892, Samuel took Delilah on a picnic to the spot where he had first shown her the ranch. The children were with Mrs. Chen for the day, giving them rare time alone. They sat under a cottonwood tree, looking out over land that now held not just cattle but orchards and fields. The house had grown from a simple cabin to a sprawling ranch house with 2 stories and a wraparound porch. You ever regret it? Samuel asked. Leaving your old life, coming out here to marry a stranger. Delilah looked at him, at this man who had accepted her past without judgment, who had stood by her when she needed it most, who had given her a future beyond anything she had imagined. Not for a single moment. You are the best decision I ever made. He kissed her, slow and sweet. "I only see our future, remember, and it looks brighter every day." As the sun set over the Arizona Territory, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Delilah leaned against her husband and thought about the journey that had brought her here. She had fled St. Louis in shame and fear, hoping only to escape her past. Instead, she had found love, family, belonging, and purpose. The mail-order bride who had arrived in Gila City 10 years ago was gone, transformed into a rancher's wife, a mother, a teacher, a valued member of the community. She had learned that the past did not define her, that she had the power to choose her own future, and she had chosen well. The children grew and eventually started families of their own. Simon took over the ranch operations, showing the same dedication and intelligence his father had. Dorothy married a lawyer who set up practice in Gila City, keeping her close to home. Daniel became a doctor, studying back east but returning to serve the community he loved. And little Daisy, true to her adventurous nature, married a surveyor and traveled throughout the territories before settling in California. But they all came home regularly, filling the ranch house with grandchildren and noise and love. Samuel and Delilah grew old together, their hair turning silver, their hands becoming gnarled with age and work. But their love never dimmed. In 1915, as they sat on the porch watching their great-grandchildren play in the yard, Delilah reflected on the incredible life they had built. The Arizona Territory had become a state 3 years prior, and the world was changing rapidly. But here on their ranch, some things remained constant. "No regrets?" Samuel asked, as he had so many times over the years. "None," Delilah replied, as she always did. "Only gratitude." She thought about the frightened young woman who had stepped off that stage coach 33 years ago, carrying her secrets and her shame. She thought about the moment she had confessed her past to Samuel, certain he would send her away. And she thought about his response, the words that had changed her life. "I only see our future." Those words had been a promise, and Samuel had kept it every day of their marriage. He had never once thrown her past in her face, never used it against her in an argument, never made her feel less than cherished. He had meant what he said that day in the boarding house room. Her past truly did not matter to him, only their future, which they had built together one day at a time. Now, surrounded by the fruits of that future, by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, by a ranch that had grown beyond their wildest dreams, by a love that had endured and deepened over 3 decades, Delilah knew she had been blessed beyond measure. Samuel reached for her hand, his grip still strong despite his age. She laced her fingers through his, a gesture they had repeated countless times over the years. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About that first day. About how terrified I was to tell you the truth. About how you could have sent me away, but you did not. I could never have sent you away. From the moment I saw you step off that stage, I knew you were meant to be mine. Even with all my baggage, especially with all your baggage, it made you who you are, strong and brave and compassionate. And it brought you to me. I would not change a single thing." As the sun set over the ranch they had built together, as their family laughed and played around them, Delilah sent up a silent prayer of thanksgiving. She had come west seeking escape and found instead a home. She had married a stranger and found her soulmate. She had confessed her past and been given a future beyond her wildest dreams. The mail-order bride from St. Louis had become Delilah Irwin of Gila City, Arizona. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. And she knew with absolute certainty that every mile of that long journey, every moment of fear and doubt, had been worth it to arrive at this perfect moment of peace and love. Samuel squeezed her hand, and she looked at him, seeing not the old man he had become but the young cowboy who had stood in front of the general store, nervously turning his hat in his hands, ready to meet his future wife. His eyes still held the same warmth, the same love, the same acceptance that had captured her heart all those years ago. "I love you," she said, the words as true now as they had been on their wedding day. "I love you too. Always have, always will." And as the stars began to appear in the darkening Arizona sky, Delilah rested her head on her husband's shoulder, grateful for every blessing, every challenge, every moment of the beautiful life they had created together. The past was just a memory now, powerless to hurt her. Only the future mattered, and theirs had been filled with more love than she had ever thought possible.